All right, welcome back to Stock D. We're going to start onto a new stream with the class, and so now we're going to move into data management. And so we're going to start off kind of slow, and I've been struggling over the weekend on how I'm going to actually present this information, and I'm not really sure how this is all going to work out because um, in times past I have done a lot of this stuff in live where students can actually see what we're doing. I've also done where students follow along at the same time that I do, and so with the whole distance learning thing, that becomes a little more problematic, and probably even more problematic is the fact that I really can't get instantaneous feedback on whether or not you're getting the concepts of what I'm trying to teach. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give kind of an introductory about basically database management. It's data management, but really we're going to be talking about a database or databases, and we also have an online resource that we're going to utilize. I think there are 16 total lessons through that, and so again, it's not the greatest, but I think that it will give a lesson content so that we're all getting the same content, because it has built-in feedback into it. So anyhow, yeah, I'm not sure how this is all going to work out. We're going to give it our best, and we're going to do what we can. And so if you have issues, you have problems, please reach out to me and let me know that you're having issues and problems sooner rather than later. And obviously, I'm going to try to be as flexible as I can to make sure that everybody is getting what they need, and that your grades are not seriously impacted by because we're doing this through distance learning. All right, and so the first thing we're going to talk a little bit about, and I would like to think that we all probably have used Excel before, but that may be an erroneous assumption. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Excel first. All right, and all Excel is a spreadsheet. And when we think about a relational database, really it's just a set of spreadsheets that have a relationship, all right, to each other, to within themselves and to each other. And so there are non-relational databases, and that's outside of what we are going to cover here. And really this is just kind of touching the we're not going to get in great detail on the subject. We're just going to try to get you an introduction and hopefully get you comfortable going through this, and so that you can actually be functional somewhat anyhow with the concepts of database management. All right, so the first thing when we talk about Excel, well, let's talk first about relational database, or a database table. All right, and so a database table. Wow, that was funky. Sorry, it just wanted to float around all by itself. And so we're going to use a table. It's a two-dimensional table, and so what we have here is an empty Excel file. And so what we've got here is I'm going to create a series of columns. All right, and so the first one I'm going to label as number, and all I'm doing, oops, is just typing in there, and we are adding information. All right, and I can, if we notice that in this particular instance, my column name is wider than what that is, I could just drop in there and I can kind of squish those, and so now they are bigger. So we can adjust the size of that. Again, if this is something that you're already familiar with, great. For those of you who are not, hopefully this will be something that is useful to you. All right, and so get in there. Come on. There we go. All right, so that was going to be favorite color. And so here I'm just making these so that, and what I've done in the past is, and again, this is something that the students would do right along with me, and obviously that's going to be rather difficult to do here. All right, so here we go. We've set up. All right, and so these are going to be the main columns, the main headers for the type of information that I'm going to be referencing, and this holds true for our databases, right? And so, and you might say, well, what's this number thing here? Because we've got numbers all down the left-hand side, right? Well, we do, but those really aren't something that we can access, all right? And so, what this column is going to be is actually a key that differentiates data, all right? And so, I'm going to go ahead and start it out at, we'll say, 001. All right. And so as we go through here, I'll go ahead and populate my data. And then what I would have them do, my dorm is home. Area code 352. Ooh. Favorite color. Oh, let's go green. I don't know. Favorite animal, eagle. All right. So here we go. So I populate my data, and then I would have each of you go around and gather the data from 10 other people. And so, we might have, you notice it's stripping off the 2. I could actually change the format of that if it really was a big deal to me, but it's not. All I'm caring about there is that this becomes a unique value for each and every entry in here. And so you see that for entry number 1, we have a series of information that is stored, that is accessible. All right, and so now let's say that Brad Pitt filled out his, and now we see, hey goodness, he's got, and I have no idea what his area code is. Unfortunately, he's not on my speed dial. Darn it, I had to work on that. Maybe he has the same color, and he's probably a wolf kind of guy. I don't know. I really don't know. Doesn't matter. But so what we see is that we have some data bits that are the same. All right, and so his dorm and my dorm are the same. Favorite colors are the same. And what would happen if, maybe his first name, his given name was really Steve? I don't know. Maybe it is. I kind of doubt it, but whatever. All right. So that's what this whole key is for, is so that we're able to separate out and address this by a person. Okay. So again, in a normal classroom, I would just have each of the students go around and gather data from 10 of their other students. All right, and this works really well. Distance learning, not so much. Except, hey, I got to meet Brad Pitt, right? I got Brad's information. Woohoo! All right. So here we have, again, our key, which is going to differentiate all of these entries. First name, last name, dorm, area code, favorite color. All right. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? We're all good there. So we've done this. We created a simple Excel spreadsheet, and all right, most of you have probably done this at some point in time, though some of you may not have. And for those of you who didn't, hopefully this is useful. If you are still having problems, issues, whatever, please let me know. Because there is a lot to Excel, and I actually use Excel quite a bit to do different things, and very, very useful. But it does have its limitations, and so some of the advantages of it is that, you know, direct entry, really simple. All right, you know, and it has the ability to auto calculate. You can insert you can input formulas that will take one column and do something to it from another column and export, and I mean, you can do a lot with a database. They're very, very powerful. The database with a spreadsheet, they're very, very powerful, very, very useful. All right, but what do you think might be a disadvantage of this? Well, let's say that, you know, we went around to all of the students at Taylor University and we captured all of their information, right? Or if we went to a larger school, say Ball State, which has, I don't know, 30,000 students. All right, if we captured all of their information, right, that's great. But now if I wanted to pick out a single person's information, it becomes rather difficult to find that. You know, imagine scrolling through this. Throw this back over here. Oops. Boy, that's just really weird. So imagine, you know, we've got 30,000 lines of information. You know, these things it just keeps spooling on and on and on. All right, so there I am, you know, I haven't quite got to 1,000 yet. Well, if I'm trying to read these for comprehension and find that one person's information, you know, now multiply that times 30. All right, it becomes very, very cumbersome. And so that's where spreadsheets really, they don't work so well, is that when we have a huge amount of data captured, then they become less than useful, and in actuality they become very cumbersome to actually find that. Now there are some things that we can do to help ourselves find that, but you know, it's not ideal. So what a database does, let's see here, yeah, and so you can sort a spreadsheet. All right, you can sort things, and you can do a lot of different things. All right, with a database, we can do a lot more, and we can do it very easily with just a few different keystrokes. We can pull out amazingly complex amounts of information. We can format that information, and we can put it out into a format that we want. And so databases are very, very, very powerful. All right. So I already talked a little bit about disadvantages of spreadsheets. Yes, you can sort and organize. All right, but again, if you've got huge amounts of data, that becomes very, very, very difficult. All right. So we'll talk about an introduction to a database. All right. So the last time I taught this, I used Microsoft Access 2016, which not everybody will have access to, and so that's another kind of issue that I'm experiencing here with the distance learning aspect of this. So not everybody is going to have access to Access. Wow. It is a Monday morning. I'm ready to go back home. So what I've decided to do is, like I said, we have an online resource, and it's SQL Bolt, and it will guide you through the basics of database management. And it starts off with real simple queries and so forth and so on. All right. So, but first, let's talk about what is a database. All right, and so a database basically is a series of two-dimensional tables. And so when we have our Excel file up, now I got to go all the way back to the start of this silly thing. All right, so it's two-dimensional. So we've got this dimension here, we've got our headers here, and then we've got another dimension here down the left side. All right, so we've got our key here, and then we've got our column names. All right, so a table, that's essentially what a table is within a database. All right, and so what we can do with SQL or SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language, SQL, is that we can we can create a table, we can modify a table, we can query a table, we can develop forms, we can develop reports. It's very, very easy to manipulate large amounts of data into a very unique specified format, so that makes it very powerful in that, again, if we had 30,000 students who'd put their information in here, we could go through and we could query for everyone whose first name is Steve, and we could see what their favorite animal was. So we could actually create a query that selects the first name and favorite animal, and we could set that with a Boolean logic where first name equals Steve, and then it would actually find every person, every entry where the first name was Steve, and then it would also return what their favorite animal was. And so you can see the utility of that in that, we could query those 30,000 records and see of all the Steves what their favorite animal is. All right, and so that's a really generic use for this, but I think you could see the power of being able to do that. And so I could actually pull up all of the data. All right, wildcard substitutions do actually work, and so if I wanted to pull up everything within that in that record, I could just use the asterisk, the star, and it's a wildcard, and it'll pull up everything. All right, so very useful stuff. All right, let's see. All right, so I think that's where I want to stop with the well, not necessarily the lecture, but with the PowerPoint. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to log into, or actually there's no logging into it, it's just, you just do it. All right, the SQL bolt. All right, and so if you go, and it's https://sqlbolt.com. All right, and I'll leave that up there for a moment for you to get that. Save that in your favorites. And then hopefully everybody is there. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and go there. And I think what I'm going to do is I will have each of you, we're going to set aside a certain number of lessons for each day. And like I said, there are 16 lessons, I think, overall. And they start out pretty basic, and then they get much more in detail. All right, and so it starts off with, this is just an introduction to SQL, and it talks a little about, what is SQL, what does SQL stand for, talks about relational databases, right? And so just gives you an overview of databases, all right? And then once you're done, and I think what I'm going to do is I will have a series of questions that I will post out there, and those questions will be from the lessons. And what I really want you to do is to go into the lesson. And so where did my so here we have the very first one. All right, and so what does SQL stand for? These are the questions that I will post in Moodle. All right, and they'll be as a document, and the answer in red is what you're going to pull out from. Throw this back over here. This is really kind of all right. So, and you'll just highlight, use Control C, and then you'll come over here and you'll Control V. You'll drop your answer in there. All right, and then you'll submit that as proof that you've done it. I think I will also ask that you, when you get done with a lesson, that you do a print screen and submit that as proof of completing that particular lesson. All right, so let's see, where are we at here? Minimize that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Begin Lesson 1, Writing SQL Series. All right, so SQL Lesson 1, Select Queries 101. All right, and so there will be questions that are directly from the reading. And again, I want you to go through and pick the answer to the question, and I want it verbatim. Just copy and paste it right out of this. All right. So the way this format works is that it gives you a little bit of information up front. It gives you some specific information here. All right. So for a particular query, if I were going to pull two column names, and so if you look down here at the bottom, so we have a table called movies, all right, and so that's our two-dimensional table, very similar to what we did with Excel. Oops, what just happened? Get over there. Silly thing. All right, so we see that we have essentially the same thing, right? All right, so we have our ID, our unique identifier key, over here on the left, and then we have headings. Okay, so the exact same thing, same concept. All right, and so the thing with SQL is that it uses a syntax. All right, and you might be asking, well, what's a syntax? All right, well, a syntax is how we structure whatever it is that we're trying to do. In this particular case, for a query, if we look up here, we've got select column, comma, another column, comma, from my table. All right, and so you might be asking, well, what does that mean? So keywords here are select. All right, and what we're telling is that we're going to select data. So we're selecting a column. So in this case, a column would be title, or director, or year, or length in minutes. Length minutes. All right. So we can select one column, or we can select multiple columns. All right. The from tells it where we're actually pulling that from, because if you think about a database had a whole bunch of tables typically. It may only have one table, but it might have several tables. All right. And so we're telling it specifically which table we are going to pull that from. All right. So it gives you your syntax. It gives you another example here. Here's the wildcard select star from my table. All right, which that star can stand for anything. And so if we put select star from my table, it's going to take all of the data from my table and it's going to give it to you. All right. So now as we get into this, all right, down at the bottom we will actually have an exercise. Okay, and so if you look on the right, in this particular one there are 5 tasks. All right, so now what we're going to do is find the title of each film. All right, so we have our keywords. We have select and from. All right, and the movies is already populated for us, so we're pulling from movies. All right, and so find the title of each film. So I'm going to type in title. All right, and then you'll see that all it did is it pulled the information from all of the entries within that under the column title. Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, Wall-E, and Up. All right. Now, if you look over on the right-hand side, we see all of a sudden that we got a green check mark here that says, yep, you did that. All right. And so, okay, now I'm going to reset this. All right. Find the director of each film. So, again, movies is already selected for me, so that's the table I'm actually looking for. And so now I am looking for the director. All right. And so now we see that it returned the director. All right. John Lasseter, Pete Docter, Andrew Stanton, Brad Bird, John Lasseter, whatever. Okay. And again, we get a corresponding green arrow. Yay! We're doing so well. All right. I'm going to reset it again. Find the title and director. Oh my gosh, this is getting difficult. Oh, I don't know if I can do this. All right. So I'm going to type title. And then if we reference back up here, all right, if we're going to pull more than one set of data, I just separate those by a column, or by a comma, excuse me. So I'm going to do title and director from movies. All right. And so there it returned all of the titles and then the associated directors, all right, from the table movies. All right, so pretty straightforward, pretty simple. All right, now we're going to find the title and year over here. Okay, so we've got our green check marks going. I'm going to go ahead and reset this again. And so find the title and year. So I can do title. Remember, we're going to separate the next bit that we're looking for and year. All right, and so there it returned all the titles and the year that they came out. All right, and again we get our little green check over here that says, "Yay, good job, you did it." All right. Now the final one, find all information about each film. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and hit reset, and in actuality, it's right there for me. If I use that wildcard star, it is going to return everything from that. And so, ta-da! There we go. Good job. All right, so now we're moving on to our SQL Bolt Lesson 2. All right, and that's queries with constraints. And this is a multi-part lecture or I don't know what you want to call it. Tutorial. Yeah, that's it. That's the word I'm looking for. All right. And so, and let's go back. So what I want you to do is when you get to the point where you have all green arrows here, all right, I want you to do a print screen. And so it's Control, and then you should have a print screen if you're on a Windows machine. If you're not on a Windows machine, then you may not have that. I'm not sure what to do with a Macintosh or an Apple. Hopefully you know how to do that. If not, reach out to me and I'll find somebody who is actually functional on the whole Apple Mac thing, and we'll find out what we can do. All right, so what that did when I did that control print screen is it copied a picture of this to my clipboard inside my computer. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the document where we're answering the questions, and I'm going to hit Control V, and it's going to put up the little thing there, and I'll be able to see that yes, you indeed did complete that particular lesson, and you got your little green check marks. All right, so again, I'm really kind of struggling with how to do this effectively long distance. I think that this is one of the better options. If somebody else has feedback, I'm more than willing to listen to it. Again, this is what I've done in the years past is something quite different, but you know, it's been interactive where I'm right there and you guys are doing the stuff at the same time, and so I'm able to provide immediate feedback and help you. But I can't do that with distance learning, at least not efficiently. So I hope that this works for us. And so now I've got to figure out how much to do for each night. I don't know. I'll probably do 3 or 4 lessons, and then by the time that you do your questions and your pasting, I think you know these first ones are going to be really quick. You know, it's not going to take very long. But as they get a little more complex, you'll have to give it some thought, and I think that'll probably take a little longer, though maybe not. So anyhow, Doc D out. And let's see how this goes.